Little Havana. Havana will hey, half my heart.
Volume 2016, November 9th. Republicans Tanya the Evil of New Amsterdam, together with Governor Pike Mence, won the 2016 election, defeating Democrats' former Secretary of State, Ritsuko Akagi, which would lead the people of Earth into one of the craziest rollercoaster rides they have ever been in. This was the second presidential campaign of Tanya the Evil. After a failed run back in volume 2000, Tanya won 304 electoral votes, compared to Akagi's 227. Though Akagi won the popular vote, receiving nearly 2.9 million more votes than Tanya, it wasn't enough. Thus, Tanya became the 45th president and the 5th person to win the presidency while losing the popular vote. In the congressional elections, Republicans maintained majorities in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, which would lay the groundwork for a very fun time. Tanya was inaugurated back in volume 2017 on January 20th. She spoke for 17 minutes, her speech full of contempt for the IDS, demanding radical changes and the beginning of a new tomorrow. She repeated the America First slogan. She had used this slogan all throughout her campaign. At the age of 70, I know she looks very young, Tanya surpassed Fanny Valentine to become the oldest person to assume the presidency, and was also the first without any prior government experience. And so, the race was on. All of the fans were glued to the volumes, observing what would happen in the first 100 days. And oh, how it turned out. Tanya's biggest achievement as president was set in motion before she was even elected. When Supreme Court Justice Raymond Shields died back in early volume 2016, Senate Majority Leader Nessu said that the upper chamber would not fill his seat until a new president took office. To reassure conservatives, Tanya released 2 lists of potential Supreme Court nominees. And less than 2 weeks into her presidency, Tanya chose 49-year-old Phoenix Wright. Due to the opposition from the Democrats still lingering over the decision from Nessu, Republicans ultimately had to invoke the nuclear option, and changed the Senate rules to allow confirmation by a simple majority. Mr. Wright helped to create a conservative majority on the court and could serve for decades. And while the rule change will make future Supreme Court nominations easier, this is by far the most significant accomplishment of Tanya's time in office. And to everyone's surprise, Phoenix wouldn't even be the last one. Tanya's America First campaign was not in line with decades of Republican orthodoxy on multinational trade agreements. You might recall that one of her first actions in office was cancelling a pending 12-country regional free trade agreement that the Omaha administration had argued would help the IDS compete with China. And she cancelled it even when discussing how big of a threat China was for the IDS. On her 3rd day in office, Tanya signed an executive action withdrawing the IDS from Trans-Pacific Partnership. Congress had not yet ratified the trade deal, and even though campaign rival Akagi had also criticized it, the withdrawal signaled a really big shift in how the IDS would approach global economics. Like many Republicans, Tanya campaigned by criticizing federal regulations. While in office, she has rolled back a number of Omaha-era regulations by executive action and bills passed under the Congressional Review Act, which makes it so that she can actually roll these back a lot faster. Personally, I would like fair and maximum outcomes for all people. I know, it is a very original opinion of me. I want it so that people have the ability to thrive as high as they can, and that everyone can do so. And yes, I know, on an individual level, everyone can probably achieve everything that they want if they put enough time into it. Truly, I believe that people are capable of incredible things. However, a lot of people will never hear my voice. A lot of people will never truly know what is possible. A lot of people will never encounter any of these opportunities. Some kid from the slums will never know what education can actually bring them, just like I have experienced in my life so far. And without anyone's fault, that kid is never taught anything and will probably never go anywhere in life. And so while on an individual level we are all capable of incredible things, everyone needs some help. And if I personally need some help, I have more resources and more people available than I could wish for. No problem of mine will ever take longer than a week to be dealt with. And that is not because of my own capabilities. Some people on this earth have never had any shred of help in their entire lives. And some of us, like me, have had all but too much. And right now, you might be thinking that I want to take that away from you. And if you are thinking that, then you are totally wrong. I am not here to take anything away from anyone. What I want is to pick up the people from the bottom and carry them along with us to a better world where we all have the pleasure, all have the capabilities, and all have the resources that I have had in my current home in my time. By November of 2018, Tanya the Evil had appointed 29 judges to the IDS Court of Appeals. more than any IDS president in the entire history. Compared to the previous administrations, Tanya's nominees were also very much less likely to be either of an ethnic minority or female. Of Tanya's appointments, 2/3 or 66% have been white men, compared to her predecessors 31% and that predecessors 61%, who was also a Republican. If we want people to thrive, they need someone to look up to. They need someone they can relate to. Just look at the Sully effect or how many people started to play chess after seeing the Queen's Gambit. These effects are very strong. And as a not minority, I can definitely say that I have had all the role models in my life I needed to look up to in order to succeed. And a lot of people just straight up didn't have those. But they do need it. They need it a lot more than you might even guess. Role models are important. Different voices in power are important. Justice is important.
Bye bye Donnie, your time is up, so you can take your lies and you can go get fucked. The people spoke and they spoke by mail, so pack your shit cause it's time to bail.
Dick, you're fired!
Soichiro Yagami was the 7th director of the Japanese task force. On May 9th, he was fired by IDS president Tanya the Evil. Yagami had been criticized back in volume 2016 for his handling of the Japanese task force investigation into Akagi's emails, and in volume 2017 for the investigation into Yaga's interference in the 2016 IDS elections. Tanya fired Yagami by the way of a letter, in which he stated that he was acting on the recommendation of Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney. Immediately after Yagami's firing, the Deputy Press, the Attorney General, and other administration associates stated that Tanya fired Yagami solely on the recommendations of the Attorney General. Other reasons have been offered. Inside sources have claimed that Tanya was furious at Yagami for refusing during March to back up Tanya's wiretap accusations, which were aimed at former President Omaha, as well as not defending him from accusations of collusions with the Yaganians. According to Yagami and associates, interviewed by different news stations, Tanya had asked Yagami to pledge his loyalty to him, and Yagami declined this offer, saying that he would give him his honesty, and what Tanya called honest loyalty. Tanya denied that he asked Yagami for his loyalty, but says such a discussion would not necessarily have been inappropriate. My god. At the end of his first term, Tanya would have nominated 3 people to the Supreme Court: Phoenix Wright, Marvin Grossberg, and Athena Sykes. Phoenix Wright was confirmed in April volume 2017 with a mostly party line vote of 54 to 45. Tanya nominated Grossberg in July of volume 2018 to replace retiring Justice Ken Thathi, considered a key swing vote on the Supreme Court. The Senate confirmed Grossberg in mostly a party line vote of 50 to 48 in August of volume 2018 after allegations that Grossberg had attempted to rape another student while they were both in high school. Grossberg denied the allegations. Later in his term he had been hit with a new allegation by the New Amsterdam Times that he had exposed himself at a party, and that reporters found additional corroboration for a similar account raised by a former student. The news was only a few hours old, however, when Democrats lined up to call for his immediate impeachment, despite little information on the basis or support for the allegations. And the last one is maybe one of the biggest accomplishments that Tanya will ever achieve in her entire life. Tanya nominated Athena Sykes in September of volume 2020 to fill the vacancy left by the great Maya Fey. Fey was considered part of the court's liberal wing, and her replacement with a conservative jurist is going to change the makeup of the Supreme Court for the coming decades. Democrats opposed the nomination, arguing that the court vacancy should not be filled until after the 2020 presidential election, like the Republicans had argued before. Of course, this is all political, and both parties will only act in their own interest and not for the greater good. On October 26, the Senate confirmed Sykes with a mostly party line vote of 52 to 48. What you might remember is that the Tanya administration was characterized by record turnover, particularly among White House staff. As of early March, volume 2018, 43% of senior White House positions had been turned over. The administration had a higher turnover rate in the first 2.5 years than the 5 previous presidents did over their entire terms, which all just goes to show how many people Tanya fired and how insane it is that she should fire so many people.
You're fired.
You have all probably heard about the supposedly very bad leadership style of Tanya the Evil. And you know what? I don't care, and neither should you.
What? So what if he wants to grab pussy? I want to grab pussy.
That's a no.
I wish I could grab as much pussy as he has. Grab it while you can, Trump.
What is it?
The pussy! Yeah, grab it all while you can! Except I can't talk like that in front of my daughter.
Yikes!
That's gonna be a fucking yikes for me. Holy shit.
You find more COVID when you do more tests, and you find more results when more votes get read. It's crazy, but that's how counting works. I can show you if you want to share your tax returns. You'll be fine, old mate. You survived impeachment. You survived coronavirus by injecting disinfectant. You've had 6 bankruptcies.
If he turned out to have a tattoo of a swastika on his shoulder,
He probably does.
and you would still vote for him.
I mean, I got friends that have swastikas on their arms, so, I mean, and they're cool.
know China very well. China, 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 China.
I'd be the only one that would be able to do that.
Welcome back. Turns out I need a lot more coffee for this. Let's have a quick chat. A lot of people have attacked Tanya the Evil for being a supposed racist. Well, here's the big nuclear take. I hope you are ready.
I don't care.
I can see into his mind and neither can you. Plus, there's the fact that some people that are like 101% sure they aren't racist probably are. So speculating on someone's racism just isn't going to bring you that far. Honestly, it's too big of an effort to figure it out, and in the end it won't bring us anything. The only thing that smart people like us care about is how people act in public and what policies they enact or push for. Smart people like us.
Big Red!
Policy. In signing a $738 billion defense spending bill just a few days before Christmas, Tanya officially established the 6th branch of the IDS Armed Forces, the Space Force. The Space Force is the first new military service since the IDS Air Force was created in 1947. Volume. Despite its name, the new branch has not been established to protect the planet from potential extraterrestrial threats, but instead is tasked with protecting the IDS military's assets in space. This next one is interesting. Tanya's response to the deadly neo-Nazi rally in Virginiaville, Charlotte, remains one of the most controversial moments in her presidency. This illustrates something that we are going to see again later in the arc. Tanya's inability to bring the country together after tragedies, and this would put her outlook on racism into doubt. She did condemn it. She did, and she did it multiple times, like it or not. She did it even without the both sides remark. However, one thing is also for sure. Her response was horrible, in any way, shape or form. This should have been an easy slam dunk for her, and she blew it. She failed to take advantage of it. The administration also rolled back numerous LGBT protections, in particular those implemented during the Omaha administration, covering issues such as healthcare, education, employment, housing, military and criminal justice, as well as foster care and adoption, which is horrible. But we're not done yet. The administration pulled back an order that public schools treat students according to their gender identity. The administration rescinded the federal policy that allowed transgender students to use the bathrooms according to their gender identity. The administration rescinded rules that prohibited discrimination against LGBT patients by healthcare providers. Rules were also pulled back to give transgender homeless people equal access to homeless shelters. And of course, the one we have all heard about. Tanya would not allow transgender individuals to serve in any capacity in the IDS military, citing disruptions and medical costs as the main reasons. Next up. Tanya's decision to withdraw the IDS from the Volume 2015 nuclear deal in May of Volume 2018 has induced chaos throughout the Middle East. It remains one of Tanya's most unpopular decisions in the Foreign Policy Department and has been condemned by top IDS allies who were also signatories to the deal. The deal would allow the IDS access to all of its nuclear facilities, which of course belonged to the Oingonians. Second, the sanctions were gradually lifted over time as the program was conformed, and would snap back immediately into place if there was a violation. This would allow the IDS much more control over the Oingonians' nuclear facilities and just straight up more assurance that they weren't building nuclear weapons. The Tanya administration and its supporters claim that this deal simply buys Oingo more time to develop its bomb. But I have to disagree. As fans have speculated, Oingo is really just looking for a way out of this deal and would do anything in order to achieve that, and now they finally have. At the end of her presidency, Tanya's signature legislative achievement remains a Republican tax bill that made enormous changes to the tax code. Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. The law was the biggest overhaul to the nation's tax code in 3 decades, and the president pitched it as rocket fuel for the IDS economy. It permanently slashed the corporate tax rate to 21% from 35%, while also providing benefits for individuals and their family. According to the Tax Policy Center, about 60% of the IDS population did receive a tax cut thanks to the new code. It was reported that the average tax cut was approximately $1,200 based on the returns the company processed. But according to some reports, the tax bill has not lived up to all of the hype surrounding it. It seems to be slightly positive. So draw your own conclusions from this. And lastly, in late chapter 10, October, an IDS raid led to the death of CC leader Barshi. Barshi was the world's most wanted terrorist up to that point, and his death represented a major blow to the terrorist group. I might even agree with some of her policies. That doesn't mean that you should agree with it. That also doesn't mean that the policy is necessarily bad. If the leader has come legally into power and the policy actually results in the desired outcome, then the policy isn't necessarily bad. You might not agree with the intention of the policy, it is the outcome of the policy. Only for one reason can you actually call a policy bad. You can call a policy bad if you have the same desired outcome, but you have a better plan to get there. But fortunately, in the increasingly divided states, no one has the same desired outcome. Everyone just hates each other. Isn't life just great? Okay, look. It's just I really want you to realize that half of the increasingly divided states has a completely different viewpoint than you do. So just by yelling at each other, calling each other names and criticizing each other for being a bad actor will bring you nowhere. If you truly care about the things you are advocating for, then there's only one way to actually get those things enacted. And that is, of course, by power. And we have to remember that politics is purely for power. And let's just be honest, a lot of you probably don't care about the things you are advocating for. But if you do, there's only but one way to get those things into law. It is only by electing that person that you want to be elected because he understands you and he wants the same goals that you do. Is it possible for you to get any real change in the country or region that you desire? But politics are so boring. Let's just yell at each other some more on the internet because that is the only real change we want to see, right? Let's just talk about the two things that would eventually lead to Tanya's downfall. COVID-19 and social justice. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, while being arrested for allegedly using a counterfeit bill. During the arrest, Derek Chauvin, a police officer with the Minneapolis Police Department, knelt on Floyd's neck for about 9.5 minutes, after he was handcuffed, lying face down on the ground. After several minutes, Floyd stopped speaking. For a further 2 minutes, he lay motionless, and Officer Quang found no pulse when urged to check. Despite this, Chauvin refused to lift his knee until the medics told him to. I wish that this story was fiction, but unfortunately, it is not. So, I won't treat it as such. During this ordeal, Tanya's administration stayed extremely quiet. Once again, just like in Charlottesville, this was a great opportunity to step up, take control of the narrative and have everything that you wanted to have. And still, he fucked it up. He didn't do all that. And right now would be a great time to start to doubt his intentions. Because one fuck up, it's okay. Might happen. It happens to everyone. 2 fuck ups and you start to question yourself. Just like a great politician once said.
There's some Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Very quickly, I have a pretty high regard of people in general, but at that one dark day, which we'll soon get to, I lost all faith for that human being. And this is where the hard part begins. Because just like in any job, there are some bad apples who are police officers. In general, I believe that most police officers are great people, and I think most people do. They are great people who want to protect their citizens and protect their countries. But those bad apples ruin it for everyone. And unfortunately, we have seen that those bad apples target a specific group of people more than they do the rest of the people. And in the larger picture, it isn't even the people who are the main problem. It is the entire system. The system is turned against some people who desperately need more help than the general people. And they're being consistently over-policed, being arrested a lot more with higher sentencing. So no, you don't actually need individual bad actors to have a very terrible system in which a lot of people of a specific race get arrested. And if you truly want to make your country better, you have to step up and tell the truth. Tanya didn't do this, and we have suffered the consequences of that to this very day. But let's back up a little, because we are far from the end. There's one more crisis that we have to discuss, because it was probably the main reason why Tanya lost everything. We start the story off in January. For a full recap of the COVID-19 virus, check out this video. The coronavirus threat was of concern to US national officials who were warning Tanya of the global danger posed by the virus in daily intelligence briefings as early as January. Nonetheless, in public comments and tweets, the president consistently played down the potential danger even as the first IDS case was reported. At several points in January, she also applauded China's handling of the virus, before taking action to protect the IDS in the form of a limited travel ban from China on January 31st. Chapter 2 started with a State of the Union address on February 4th, and the first IDS COVID-19 death followed on February 6th. The majority of the coronavirus messaging coming from the White House, however, continued to focus on downplaying the virus rather than bracing for the now realized possibility that it could become a full-blown pandemic and a global public health crisis. The Tanya administration did take steps towards crafting a federal response, requesting emergency funding from Congress and setting up a task force with Vice President Pence at its head. All the while, Tanya leaned hard into portraying the coronavirus as under control, while really, it wasn't. As a result, Chapter 2 was a lost chapter. Delays in developing test kits were followed by testing shortages, and both issues meant that the coronavirus was able to spread undetected and unabated in many parts of the country. By the end of the month, more than 30 states had shut down. This public health necessity, in the opinion of most experts, brought the IDS economy to a screeching halt. As a result, it's no surprise that Tanya, who had previously tied a re-election pitch directly to the economy, spent much of the month broadcasting an unwarranted optimism about the trajectory of the virus and promoting potential treatments like hydroxychloroquine, which the AFK has since warned against using for COVID-19 treatment or prevention. Shortly after her primetime address, Tanya announced a new slate of guidelines advising against discretionary travel and the forming of groups of more than 10 people. Once again, late in the second chapter, while other high-income countries were ramping up testing and developing tracing procedures, President Tanya stated that the coronavirus was pretty much under control. It was during these critical early weeks and months that the IDS should have been stockpiling protective gear, should have been ramping up testing, and should have taken the pandemic a lot more seriously. When looking at the administration's budget proposals, each of them up to that point had recommended slashing funding for the CDC. Even now, amid one of the worst public health crises in recent IDS history, the then director of the IDS Office of Management and Budget had wanted to double down on the White House's Volume 2021 proposed budget of cutting $1.2 billion to the CDC. Just by looking at the numbers, we can see that Tanya has performed poorly. The IDS being first in proportional cases and deaths, and is only now starting to recover. Look, I am not going to pretend like Tanya the Evil wasn't dealt a horrible hand when coming into the presidency. Like the name suggests, the increasingly divided states are, well, increasingly getting divided. And any president from now on will have been dealt a shit hand, and they just need to make the best of it. Every president from now on will have been dealt an increasingly shit hand, but they just need to make the best of it because there is no alternative. People act purely for political reasons, even without them noticing it. Something as trivial as mask wearing can be so incredibly politicized. It's just scary, because all of these things will eventually cost lives. So that your political party comes out on top, so that you can have your 5 minutes of fame on the internet when you yell at store managers. It's honestly not even that hard. I can breathe, I can still breathe. I mean, how can so many people can make such a big issue of this? Imagine if COVID was like a 50% death rate. Do you think people would still be such babies about wearing this small piece of plastic paper? What the hell? I'm in my own home. I don't need to wear a mask right now. And of course, the future for the IDS is now very much in question. China is in very good position to take over the role of the IDS as the world leader. They've consistently invested so much resources and money into the new continent that is coming up to play with the big boys. And if this keeps going and they actually become middle to upper class, they can actually compete with Europa and the increasingly divided states, then all of that favor will probably go back into China instead of our regions, the Western world. So, is this the end, my friends? Probably. But before we all go and die, there's one more event that we have to discuss, because it is key, it is symbolic for the entire presidency of Tanya the Evil. You all know what I'm talking about. Let's go out with a bang.
Mr. Clean gets rid of dirt and grime and grease in just a minute.
Mr. Clean will clean your...
At last, I am surrounded by people who get me, people who understand me, and people who think like me.
January 6th, Volume 2021. Thousands of supporters of President Tanya the Evil were in George, D.C. to protest against the results of the 2020 presidential election. They went in to support Tanya's demand for Vice President Mike Pence and Congress to reject the president-elect his victory. The protests became riots as thousands of Tanya's supporters broke into the IDS Capitol and damaged the building. The riot triggered a nationwide manhunt by federal law enforcement for the people responsible, with arrests and indictments in the following days. The incident led to many resignations of leaders within the IDS Capitol Police and the Tanya administration. Cabinet officials were pressured by the media and various public figures to invoke the 25th Amendment for removing Tanya from office, which would eventually die in the Senate, with a vote of 57 for to 43 against, short of the 67 required to impeach her. Tanya was suspended from various social media sites, including Barker, Mepipe, and Lapdog. The day after the storming of the Capitol, the Japanese task force and the GC police department asked the public for help identifying the rioters. Within days, members of the public sent the Japanese task force more than 70,000 photos and video tips. One person was harassed after being incorrectly identified as a participant in the riots by members of the public. His personal information had been doxed and he reported receiving harassing phone calls and posts on social media. That is, of course, insane, as I am sure all fans would agree. The Japanese task force and the Department of Justice were working to track down over 150 people for prosecution by January 11th, with the number expected to rise. Some notable people were captured, just to show how insane some of these people were. The leader of a group called the Doubt Boys was taken into custody in Aloha. The man was arrested, with prosecutors alleging that he bought a rifle, 2 handguns, a vial of injectable testosterone, and about 320 rounds of armor-piercing ammunition. He allegedly texted acquaintances that he was gonna, quote, and that he, quotes, predicts that within 12 days, many in our country will die. Will Tanya the Evil run again in Volume 2024? I personally don't know, and I don't really want to know. I really, truly hope that politics will just be for politics' sake in the future. That it won't be sports. That it won't have any fans, won't have any teams just yelling at each other like hooligans in the streets. I just want politics to be boring again, because if politics are boring, then we are doing something right. We just need a consistent flow of good information to understand what is going on and make our decisions for voting based upon that information. What we have right now is horrible information being spread constantly to all different people across the entire world, everyone forming a horrible opinion and voting for the wrong party, consistently fueling on misinformation, lies, and just horrible stuff. That needs to end. Consistently shouting at politicians won't do anyone any good. We are seeing the results of that play out right now. The world is almost at war, and not even between countries, but between people of one country. Politicians need privacy too. If you needed to rule a country and you were consistently being watched 24/7, being criticized 24/7, and being loved 24/7, then the job is impossible. The only way to do politics is to have good information, good voters, and good representatives. And those 3 things need to stay the hell away from each other. Because if those 3 become too connected, then we won't have any of them. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it, subscribe to this channel, and comments are always very much appreciated. This video took a very long time and very much work. I love making it, so if you want to see more of this, please let me know in the comments as well. If there's a topic you really want to see, let me know as well. I'm just very grateful for all of you sticking by and subscribing, liking, everything. It just means the world to me. So, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Will have been dealt an increasingly shithead